Hello and welcome to the Scientology Money Project. My apologies. We have had technical problems here at the ranch and computer related, of course. So, weighing on the comments, I apologize. I did not want to cancel it, but I've got a new computer, a new super go to hell computer, and I'm trying to get computers to talk to each other. So, let me know if you're still in or if we should rebroadcast the show because it's pretty interesting. And my apologies, I've never been this late, and it looks like the audience, uh, yeah, it looks like the audience may not be here. My fault. And like I said, it's a new computer that I had some. Hello, monkey paws. Let's see who's still here because, like I said, I thought I had went live, and hello, Joe Gerst. Welcome to the show. Uh, is Mary Craig Smith there. Like I said, I thought I had went live and there was a computer crash. I have a new special type of drive. Well, I mean, it's known to you guys, but I'm trying to get drives synchronized and a lot of stuff synchronized. Thank you. I'm glad you waited. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Wise Mama. Appreciate it. And hello from Finland. Always glad. Glad to see you in from Finland. Lisa. Okay. Well, you know what? I'd been getting the reason I wanted to do this. Don't chat much. Okay. Oh, I like your hair, Alicia. Um, yeah, I've been getting a lot of questions to simplify Scientology because there's so many new live streamers and people researching. There's like this huge surge of people. Well, thank you, Mary Craig Smith. And again, my apologies. Um, there was a huge surge. There's been a huge surge. The live streaming community on YouTube's created a huge surge. I've been getting calls from journalists, from people who want to know about Scientology, from former members. And my blog traffic on the Scientology Money Project is really taken off. And people, so I thought I would do, and it's better late than never. It's Sunday night. I was going to simplify Scientology because it's not that hard to understand. And I created a really nice show for you. So we're just going to dive into it. And this is Scientology Simplified. Please feel free to add comments or questions. So let's just share the screen. You know, basically, what I tell people is that May 9, 1950, L. Ron Hubbard launched Dianetics. It became a bestseller. Here's the important things. L. Ron Hubbard began doing business in 1950 as the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation in Elizabeth, New Jersey. So he began as the Hubbard Dianetic Research Foundation was a secular nonprofit corporation. It was not a religion. Hello, Benita, and I am Agent J. This is the important thing that I tell people. When L. Ron Hubbard began Dianetics, it was secular, nonprofit, and was not a religion. In fact, Hubbard was very critical of religion. And Hubbard did not use an e-meter because he didn't even know it existed. He did not invent the e-meter. It wasn't his. He instead used Freud's early technique of hypnotic regression that led to catharsis, except he called it the reactive mind. And so Scientology was not a religion. It was a nonprofit business, and it uses Freud's techniques. Now, we know that from the early newspaper coverage. This is a Dianetic reverie. This is Freudian hypnotic therapy, and of course, Freud later abandoned the use of hypnosis. But this is Hubbard would put people into hypnosis, have them go past, into the earlier traumas and relive them with the hope of having a cathartic release. So Freudian catharsis, which Hubbard stole language, he plagiarized it, he borrowed it. That's all it was. And the articles of the day, like this one you see on the right, written by Wendell Weed, poor man's psychiatry or quackery. Hubbard, of course, took Dianetics to the American Psychiatric Association, the American Medical Association, and Hubbard wanted a place at the table as a science, and they laughed him. They just laughed him to scorn and derision, because Dianetics, if you've ever tried to read it, it's garbage. I mean, it's not peer reviewed. It's not a science. It's Freudian psychotherapy from 1890. I mean, it's nothing, or whatever, it's old stuff. I forget the exact year. I've got the date somewhere. So that's what it was. And having a lot of fun doing things. In 1950, you can see on the left, you could go to the Royal Table Pad Company Incorporated. It's here, and it no longer exists, but it was on Pico Boulevard here in LA. And you could buy asbestos insulated table pads on their 5-day special. And underneath, you could attend a lecture by L. Ron Hubbard, author of Dianetics, at the Shrine Auditorium for $1. That included tax. So, and you could also get Dianetic Reverie. And here, this was an ad that was also placed at 2936 West 8th Street near Vermont. The speaker was Dr. Arthur Paulos. He was a member of the Dianetics Association. So Hubbard was out advertising in newspapers, small, cheap ads, and competing. He couldn't even afford, the Royal Table Pad Company Incorporated, with their asbestos table pads, was able to afford more expensive ads than L. Ron Hubbard. Early 50s psychs laughing at LH as they sharpen their ice picks. Well, some of them did, certainly. Some of them did, certainly. So, but there were other things going on. And I think Unstable Datum, to be fair, 1950s psychiatry was not all prefrontal lobotomies using ice picks. That was not mainstream. And certainly we could have a debate about that time, because I've read a lot of literature from the period, and that was used in extreme cases. Electroshock was more common, but there were a lot of pills going on. So I think that might, that would be an interesting debate to have, an interesting conversation to have. But I take your point, okay? Mary Craig Smith, psychotherapy was begun by the study of physical states, non-phylogenetic, non-epileptic seizures, which is fascinating. Yes, it is. And so there were lobotomies going on. There were electroshocks. There were a lot of pills. And what happened is, when you had World War II, you had so many people returning with post-traumatic stress disorder, which wasn't formalized. It wasn't formalized into those terms and concepts. And they were looking for ways to deal with a lot of PTSD from World War II, from soldiers who had seen horrific things. My great uncle Burl, he was in Iwo Jima as a Marine Corps machine gunner. He killed a lot of people. He had horrendous PTSD, undiagnosed, because it didn't exist then. They called it by different names. Combat fatigue. And a lot of vets, unfortunately, self-medicated, some unalived themselves. So you had very complex problems arising from a war in which about 500,000 Americans were lost, not counting how many were lost on the Allied side with the British, Australian, Canadians. So that was, and not to mention what went on in Germany and Japan. So yeah, you did have a big problem in addition to regular mental illness. So, but Hubbard, what he was trying to do, and that was my only point, he was trying to say that he could handle all this heavyweight stuff, that he could handle really significant mental illness, going from, severe mental illness to mild. Hubbard was also claiming he could let you get rid of your eyeglasses. He could take care of cancer, leukemia, and everything else. Hubbard made an outlandish claim. So Unstable Datum, just to juxtapose, yeah, there were lobotomies going on, electroshock, but Hubbard was claiming he could cure disease. and I mean physical disease. He said 90% of diseases were psychosomatic. Hubbard's theory was if you could eliminate the psychosomatic origin of the disease through hypnotic reverie, or what he called Dianetic reverie, which was hypnosis, you could cure the disease. And he said he could cure cancer, leukemia, get rid of your eyeglasses. He said he could even, he called it an invention greater than the fire wheel or the arch. And so, but it was really a sales and marketing organization. And what it was selling was and Hubbard's brand of hypnosis. Now, Hubbard, at the beginning, with Dianetics, he said, quote, the beginning is conception. Your patients, and notice he's telling Dianetics auditors who are not using a meter because they don't know it exists. He's thinking he's a doctor because he's saying that Dianetics practitioners using Freudian psychotherapy, which they call Dianetics, he thought they were doctors treating patients. So look at this quote. Quote, the beginning is conception. Your patients sometimes have a feeling that they are sperms or ovums at the beginning of the track. In Dianetics, this is called a sperm dream. It is not of any great value so far as we know, but it's very interesting. So one of the key points I wanted to make is Dianetics did not have past lives. They didn't have what was called the whole track. Hubbard was not religious. Dianetics was not a religion. Hubbard attacked religion, in fact, and he said there were no past lives. Hubbard said the beginning was conception, when the sperm and the egg united to conceive. He said that was the beginning. So these are important things to know. These were very important things to know. And I'm appreciating the comments. We're going to get to material because I was late and I want to give you the material. So there were no past lives. But of course, that would change later, and Scientology would walk that back. I found a kind of a fun thing here I wanted to show you when I was researching. Believe in yourself. You are the fastest sperm. Never forgot you came to this world as a winner. That's right. That's right. The sperm that got to the egg first, that was like the Michael Phelps sperm. You're a winner. You're a winner because none of the others won out. So, just wanted to add that in. Now, I like this point. Yeah, I like this occasion, Juju. Thank you. My dad was Army Korea. He said they called PTSD shell shock. Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah, shell shock. Yeah, with my great uncle Burl. Yeah, he had a rough time with his nightmares and things, and they just gave him pills, and he drank, and it was hard to deal with it. This is something else I found just off the side. This is in the context of the time of test tube babies. So Hubbard was trying to be a scientist or a greater scientist, he called himself, nuclear physicist, an authority on the mind. This was an interesting thing I found in the period while doing some research, test tube paganism. Because I like to talk about the Bible and Christianity a lot, having grown up in that tradition, as you know. And Bishop Fulton, Norman Vincent Peale, who was a prominent Catholic cleric, called it test tube paganism. Can you believe that? Test tube paganism. So the view at that time held that if you were doing basically test tube babies, if you want to call it that phrase, that was a form of paganism because it defied the laws of God. So a childless couple, the Catholic Church was opposed to that. That's a terrible thing. But test tube paganism, moral or pagan, pastor split. This was just an interesting aside. So fast forward, L. Ron Hubbard, and I've covered this before, but this is for new listeners because there's a lot of them, and I'm glad to see them out there fighting Scientology in the streets. Now, Volney Matheson and Hubbard met around late 1951, early 1952. Their first meeting's not recorded, but Volney, an amateur psychiatrist, invented his version of the electropsychometer, which I've done a series of papers on, and that goes back into 1890. And of course, right around, I believe, 1918, Carl Jung was working with an electropsychometer, and it was called an electrogalvanometer then. And Carl Jung worked on auditing using trigger words. And there's a book on it I've covered. So Volney took Carl Jung's work and updated the electronics, because after World War II, the electronics improved and the sensitivity improved. And so Hubbard actually wrote this note on the left in Scientology Journal: auditor's log, without e-meter 1,000 hours, with e-meter 80 hours. So just as Hubbard was saying that his method could shorten the time required to do psychotherapy, he said a meter could improve it. So if you used Freudian psychotherapy in the Dianetic Reverie or the hypnotic regression, if you got the meter, you could reduce your time from 1,000 hours to 80 hours to work a particular engram. So Catholic doctrine is still against IVF, in vitro fertility. You wouldn't call it pagan, though. Yeah, that was an interesting thing. They considered it pagan at the time they were debating it, and that was quite a debate. Wayne's World. Half my father's friends were veterans. Half of them weren't always all there. Mom said her brother's body came back from Europe, but he didn't. I've had I've had people say that exact quote. The body came back, but the person didn't. And I don't want, I'm working with a young man who's had PTSD, and it's difficult. I'm trying to help him in the ways that I can. I think Mary Craig Smith, this is exactly it. That test tube paganism sounds like fear porn. I just don't see how paganism is applicable description as a cultural term. There is fear porn, and that's a great term. And that's what L. Ron Hubbard used. He used fear porn about radiation and about a lot of other things. Paganism was not applicable unless you were a Catholic, because really the term pagan is just a way of invalidating something that, you have a mainstream belief, you're a Catholic. So anything else that opposes Catholicism would be pagan. That means not of the Bible. So it's pagan. Yeah. And that's just a form of invalidation. So there's a pivot at which Hubbard dumps Freud. And even though he used him, he later damns him. He actually acknowledges Freud in I believe, in Dianetics, but he dumps them. And so where do we go next? And so this, by the way, this Volney's early device pumped out a lot more energy, put a lot more electrical current through the body, quite a bit more than Hubbard's later meter. Now, this is an interesting thing. Just as Hubbard had unabashedly bragged, because he was an unabashed braggart and liar, he said that Dianetics was greater than the invention of the wheel, the fire, or arch. No, Ron, no. Dianetics is not greater than the invention of the wheel, the fire, or the arch. That kind of pure bullshit, which is what it was, exaggeration, showed the marketing angle. It also shows Hubbard's coming up out of Pulp Fiction, where everything was hyper exaggerated. You had to hyper exaggerate everything to sell. I found an interesting quote from Hubbard about how if anyone, criticized his Pulp Fiction writing, he would punch them soundly in the nose. So this quote, so he throws away Freud. His invention of the engram and the reactive mind being treated by hypnosis, he throws that all out, and he says, the nimble needle of the electropsychometer can detect with accuracy things which would have been otherwise hidden from man forever. So that's his pivot. I'm going to read this quote. Okay, so the invention of the electropsychometer, this is paragraph 2, like so many important things in this cynical and dull age have unearthed, is not cited by our generation as very important, because it wasn't that important. Yet in a future time, historians may well spend pages and pictures on it, didn't have run. So let's go to the third paragraph. Quote, for if the truth be known, L. Ron Hubbard raves, the electropsychometer utterly dwarfs the invention of the microscope for Leeuwenhoek. Sorry if I can't pronounce that name right. For Leeuwenhoek found the way only to find bacteria. That's a weird sentence. So the e-meter dwarfs the invention of the microscope because all the microscope could do was find bacteria. Yeah, that wasn't important compared to finding engrams. Hubbard continues, the electropsychometer provides the way for man to find his freedom and to rise, perhaps, to social and constructive levels of which man has never dreamed, and to avoid perils in that route which man, in going, would have found more deadly than any bacteria ever evolved or invented. Oh, Ron, you frigging moron. So look at what Hubbard's doing. Look what Hubbard's doing. Look at what this idiot's doing. He's saying that the e-meter, like it's trivial that bacteria was discovered with the microscope. Yeah. After the pandemic, yeah. Or, what's interesting is, I think I mentioned it. On the Augustine side, my grandma was born in 1894. My grandpa was born in 1896. And they adopted my dad, Bill, in 1936. He was back then, a 16-year-old unmarried woman gave birth to my dad, and there was a private adoption. My dad was born in 1936, and his folks, my grandma, Beulah, was a nurse. She actually was a psychiatric nurse. She worked at Rancho Los Omegas Hospital here in Paramount, California. She was an early psychiatric nurse. And so Beulah and my grandpa Bill, who's my dad was named after Bill William, they arranged a private adoption, and so the point I was going to make is that there's really good people out there, and my grandma. I wanted to go to Unstable David. My grandma was a psychiatric nurse, and it was very difficult, a very difficult field to work in. And she continued on, and so there's some really good people out there. And when you're doing pioneering work in any type of science, there's going to be trial and error, and that's just how science proceeds. And you peer review, and that's why you try to do it. So I just wanted to diverge off there. And I forgot my main point. But that's a little bit of my family history. So my dad would talk about his mother, having to work in a psychiatric ward. So that's part of my family tradition. And that's quite something. Oh, I know what the point I was going to make. My grandma Beulah, she was married. She got married to a guy named Jesse, and he died. He died in the epidemic of 1918. He died young, and I think she was born in 1894, so she may be she was 23, 24 when Jesse died. So I wouldn't have existed or been around unless Jesse died in the pandemic. God rest his soul. And my grandparents, who were then in their 40s, wanted a baby, and they were good enough to arrange a private adoption from a 16-year-old woman, and they supported her and took care of her and did a private adoption. So there were a lot of things that all happened to us that were here, and that's part of my background. So had the microscope been invented, had they had better drugs in 1918, everything will change. But this really bothers me, having worked in science, for Hubbard to say that the e-meter is better than the microscope. This is the kind of bragging, narcissistic stupidity upon which Scientology is built. And if Scientologists knew the braggart, narcissist, idiot who actually says Dianetics is more important than the invention of fire, or and that the e-meter is more important than the microscope. This is insane. Yes. Yeah, Mary, I had a problem like that. One sentence, that last sentence, I had trouble reading it because it's so poorly constructed. And you wonder if Hubbard had been drinking or taking pinks and grays. They're really tortured. Yeah, that last sentence is really horribly constructed. Mental health nursing still tough, a calling. Yeah, I practiced for 40 years and hated to stop. My mother was born in 1919, by the way. Thank you, Pam. Yeah, my grandmother Beulah, 1894, and it was a tough calling. She died in 1959. I don't, I remember her. I remember her when I was 2. I barely remember her, but I do. My memory goes way back to like 2. I do remember her, but just barely. Like I have a fleeting image of her, but she died in 1959. So those people who are psychiatric nursing, it's a tough occupation. So we move on. This is something I wanted to show you, and this is where Scientology pivots. Okay, they get into what Hubbard calls space opera. Now, Volney G. Matheson, who Volney G. Matheson met L. Ron Hubbard and became an early Dianeticist. And this thing is so bizarre. Let me just stay there for a minute. Volney wrote in the Aberree, which was a Scientology journal in the 50s. It's really, really weird. He wrote about a death ray. And this is where you get, I want to open this for you, Volney's death ray. I'm going to share a different screen. This is where you start getting past lives. So what happened basically is that L. Ron Hubbard, where am I on camera? Okay. L. Ron Hubbard, when he started putting people under hypnotic regression or putting them on the e-meter, they'd have past lives come up. So past lives would come up, and Hubbard, because he's running a business and he's still not a religion yet, he would say if it read on the meter, let it read. Let people talk about their past lives or their lives on Venus or Mars or 58 trillion years ago or 100 billion years ago, because he's getting paid by the hour to audit, and he's getting a percent of what his auditors are doing. He trains his auditors, and it's a franchise system. He trains you to be a Scientology auditor. You buy your e-meter from him. He makes money off that, and you pay him a percentage of your earnings because it's a franchise system, and that's all it is. Aberree, OBG Foster. Let me get my trackball over. Oh, I hate when this happens. Okay. Aberree, what does that mean? Someone victimized by someone with an aberration? No. An aberree is you, OBG Foster. All of us with a reactive mind, according to Dr. Hubbard, are aberrees. We're aberrated. We're aberrated by engrams and our reactive mind. And the OT levels didn't exist. They didn't come into form until late 1966. So the Aberree was the name of a magazine for aberrees who were aberrated by engrams. So that's what Aberree was the name of a magazine. And so this thing, the inventor of the e-meter Hubbard knew, not the earlier ones. And I trace back the history of that, my series of the e-meter, going back to the beginning of electricity when they had to measure it. And I don't want to diverge off, but I want to share this screen because it's just crazy, let me see. No, I want to keep sharing it. So Volney said he invented a death ray. And so after you achieve clear, you don't need the magazine anymore. Well, a clear didn't come around until I believe the world's first clear was 1965, John McMaster. There had been earlier first clears, but in Scientology, like Sonia Bianca was the world's first clear. And although so-called scholar Ian Camacho debates that, she was the first clear. And then there were other clears that Hubbard made, but those got revoked because they really weren't the first clears. And we're getting off track, but I don't care if we go along. This is a lot of fun. So I wanted to get to the matter of Volney Matheson's death ray. So I'm going to stop sharing this, and we're going to go to Volney's death ray, because this is what I want to show you is how crazy early Scientology was. Okay, so this is this is an article I did during the dark times when we were all inside the house, and I like that graphic. I took an album cover and I shoot Conjuring the Dead. I really like the shoot I did. I just took an existing piece of art offline and I put e-meters on it. I think that's a really great graphic. Look at all that's going on in there. To me, that's what Scientology is the ultimate mind fuck. It's evil, occult, but there's also sinister wealth extraction. There's all kinds of sinister evil. This is to me a perfect image that I borrowed the main image I just shoot on the meters. This to me is what Scientology is. It's a place of death and destruction, utter death and destruction. And there was a time where Hubbard kicked out the e-meter because Volney wouldn't sell him the rights. But what I really wanted to get to was to show you what informed early. There was a jump from Dianetics to Scientology. And Volney Matheson, that's his e-meter. Here. Be informed that Volney Matheson is at present being sued for his patents. So Hubbard actually tried to sue Volney apparently to get his patents. So that's an interesting thing. Hubbard wanted to lock up exclusive rights to the e-meter. And this is not where I'm going. And there's Hubbard's e-meter. No, this is the Galaxy T8. When Volney Matheson was in good standing with L. Ron Hubbard in early Scientology, in 54, he writes this thing about how he created this death ray. And if we go to down here, if you can see this paragraph, Ron audited. It's right just above the policeman. He said that he was a principal inventor of a facsimile 1 machine. And Volney writes, which I first developed in the T8 galaxy 42 trillion years ago, and which, as a member of the 8th Invader Corps, I used 20 trillion, 2 and 1/8 years later to take over an entire system of planets in the Arcturus area. And so Hubbard gave him a $250 check to try to create this death ray. Anyway, you can find that at my blog, and this you can just go through these Abery magazines, but I cut out the death ray thing. And Hubbard actually funded Volney to see if they could create a death ray, because Volney learned it from the 8th Invader Corps in Galaxy T8. And he's talking about a radioactive blast in his garage, and this was a Mercury jet, and Mercury's not radioactive. But anyway, this is the most lunatic, batshit crazy thing. And that's the guy that invented the e-meter to try to help himself that Ron took. And Volney, known criminal of the 8th Invader Corps, used in some kind of death device 20 trillion years ago to take over planets. Ladies and gentlemen, that's the context. L. Ron Hubbard, like anything goes. Okay, if it read on the meter, it's true, because Hubbard would say what's true for you is true for you. Plus, he was being paid. So if Volney said, I, used a death ray to take over planets, damn it. Yeah, dark arts and black magic it is. And Jeffrey, you're multi-talented. Well, thank you, Benita. My mind is wide ranging and it's caused me a lot of problems through my life. Which, it drove my parents insane. Some of the things I would come up with, they had problems. So I'm going to stop that screen and we're going to get back to the track. So anyway, you had the meter allowed in past lives, demons, evil, planet killing people like Volney, and some of them got pretty violent and they began to, oh wow, this is a great, oh wow, Volney sounds like Cat and Bill. Yes, sir. Unstable datum. That's a great insight. Yeah, I'm positive that mercury has radioactive isotopes. Well, isotopes, yes, but mercury in and of itself, um, high seas banditry. High seas banditry. We shall put an end to the pirates. We shall crush the high sea bandits. High sea banditry. Yeah, it could, but if you recall the fluorescent lamp, the fluorescent light, compact fluorescent, and even high intensity discharge. I mean, I worked in that as, in my era when we had fluorescent lighting was the standard for office buildings, commercial, even kitchens and things like that. We weren't concerned with it, so yes, you're probably correct, and I'm not a scientist, and I don't have my lookup charts here. I don't have my scientific books here. So let's get back to this is why I love my audience. We can just we can talk about mercury isotopes, and I have to find my PowerPoint presentation. Okay, we're going to go back to Volney and his death ray. Okay, so that's like what was going on. It was a free for all, and it was satanic. And there were elements in the Philadelphia lectures. Hubbard had talked about Crowley, and he talked about the black arts. So yeah, there was all kinds of stuff going on, and that's why I like this cover image. That's why I really like this image, because I think it's somebody else's art, which I borrowed, and I don't know the name of the author, and I wish I did, because that's just an amazing image that characterizes, I think, what's bad and evil and wicked. And that's how I would characterize it in the symbology in there. I understand perfectly because I studied. I'm a symbologist. I've studied symbology all my life. And there's such sophisticated symbology in this. Whoever did this is a master of symbology and image. To me, this is an astonishing work of art, and I just borrowed it respectfully to show what I think Scientology is. Now, this is where the pivot happens. April 10, 1953. This is a letter that L. Ron Hubbard wrote to Helen O'Brien, his secretary. Scientology, Church of, does not dispute this letter. In fact, in cult apologist Donald Westerbrook's book, it's printed. Scientology does not dispute this, and that's important. I'm going to read the letter. This is Hubbard writing, quote, "We don't want a clinic. We want one in operation, but not in name. Perhaps we could call it a spiritual guidance center. Think up its name, will you? And we could put in nice desks and our boys in neat blue with diplomas on the walls and, one, knock psychotherapy into history, and two, make enough money to shine up my operating scope, and three, keep the HAS solvent." The HAS was the Hubbard Association of Scientologists. It was the membership organization for all Scientologists, because by that time, Dianetics had become Scientology. Okay. And Hubbard goes on, "It is a problem of practical business. I await your reaction on the religion angle." Repeat, I await your reaction on the religion angle. In my opinion, we couldn't get worse public opinion than we have had or have less customers with what we've got to sell. Now that letter is mind-blowing because Hubbard is saying that he wants a clinic in operation, but not in name. And that's because he'd been sued for teaching medicine without a license. He could be sued for practicing medicine without a license. There had been a Scientologist, I don't know by this time, who had been arrested for offering to heal without a license. So he's thinking, well, we'll do the same thing we're doing, secular e-meter psychotherapy, but we'll call it a religion. He also says that they'll put our boys in neat blue with diplomas on the wall. So he's wanting the fake authority of diplomas. And he was issuing doctorates of Scientology, and you could get masters of Scientology. So he was like a self-certifying lunatic. Yeah, this is like unstable data. I agree with you. What do you mean by operating scope? I don't know. Hubbard says, make enough money to shine up my operating scope. I don't know what the fuck he means by that. I could see Hubbard saying, I need to make enough money to shine up my operating scope. Yeah, that evokes certain images that are not good. Like, are they still on that goal with Narcanon? They've been on that goal with the goal of shining up the operating scope or calling it a spiritual guidance center. I think all of the above, Mary. So yeah. So anyway, he's saying, I await your reaction on the religion angle in that bot. So Hubbard was saying we've got to go on the religion angle because that would give him protection and he could do a lot of things with it. So accordingly, this is from my unpublished manuscript, and like I told you before, it's 400,000 words, and Hubbard's not even dead, so I don't know if I'm going to do several volumes or ever even finish it or just publish it in partial form. I don't know what to do with it. It's 400,000 words. Hubbard's not dead because I'm encyclopedic, and it's a review of some literature, but it adds new literature. But so on December 18, 1953, Hubbard incorporated 3 new churches. So he did decide to take the religion angle, as he called he said in his letter to Helen O'Brien, who he later threw out of the church, and he called her Horseface O'Brien. Isn't that just charming? Horseface O'Brien. And yeah, so he started the Church of American Science, the Church of Scientology, the Church of Spiritual Engineering, which is the precursor of Religious Technology Center, I guess. So these 3 churches, that was the original platform. And going into some text, he was doing one. The Church of American Science was going to reach out to Christian churches. That was going to be like the Christianized version of Scientology because he's going to try to market into the Christian world. The Church of Spiritual Engineering appears to be be concerned with his e-meter experimentations, trying to get Volney's patent or build his own. And then the Church of Scientology, which we know. That was the one that was started in 53 and would later, as a condition of Scientology getting tax exemption, they would disincorporate the Church of Scientology of California, which was another variant. So that's a corporate history. But Hubbard did go religion. He went religion. And reverse engineering is more like it. Yeah, they reverse engineer. That's a point well taken. Interesting how it was a tripartite corporate structure even back then. Yes, true. Yeah, and you're getting ahead of me, Unstable Dan. Very good. And I see you on the phone talking. I think you're talking to my computer modem from 1995, hacking into my computer. I suspect you of being an agent. I was telling, I thought I was going live. I was up at the Moffett airfield in San Jose yesterday on a visit. And the Googleplex is right next. I wanted to tell this story. The Googleplex is right next door. It's right on the same land. They've got like a 99-year lease or something. The Googleplex has a lease with Moffett Field, which is American military. It's NASA largely, but the Navy uses it. And Google, has backdoor, gives the CIA and the NRO and the NSA and all the alphabet agencies backdoors. And Google executives actually are on government land, and Google gets to use its corporate aircraft. They get to land on U.S. military airfields, which is unheard of. Nobody gets to do that. But the Googleplex looks so futuristic. And in one of the big giant blimp hangars, one of them they're taking down, I think hangar number 2, Sergey Brin, one of the co-founders of Google, is building this 400-foot long airship. And then the other one they're reskinning, and it looks so futuristic. It looks so out of the future. It's amazing. And they're going to value this blimp hangar from World War II, where the rigid airship, the I believe it's the USS Macon, was stationed in 32, 33. Pretty frigging amazing. They're going to value the reskinned blimp hangar, and these things are huge. They're, I don't know, 600 feet long or something. They're just tall. They could put a rigid. They're going to value it at 2.5 billion. It's an irreplaceable thing. But anyway, I was up there. I didn't have time to go over the Googleplex because I'm at Moffett Field, and that was quite a trip. That was something else to do. Was up there. So let's go back to okay. So that's the tripartite organization, and I like your use of the word. I like my now. So what happened? We're going to skip ahead. So Hubbard created the Guardian's office, fair game. He created all his horrendous stuff. He created corporations. He created waivers where you just sign away your rights. But basically, this is the Church of Scientology simplified. The Church of Scientology, scripture, as it calls it, is Hubbard's body of written and spoken words. And there's a red volume, green volume, there's blue volumes. So Hubbard, everything he wrote, said, or spoke became copyrighted. That's the entire basis of the Church of Scientology, are the copyrighted works of L. Ron Hubbard, which they sell. And just for my audience, now a lot of the because David Miscavige ordered the red volumes and green volumes out of the orgs, and the blue were never allowed in. A lot of the live streamers and new people, the surge of new people watching Scientology, which I'm so glad to have. Okay, the old timers would talk about the red volumes and green volumes. I want to show it to you. This is how Scientology actually works. And this is a red volume. This is a red volume. Let me turn it around here. So this is a red volume, standard tech. And the red volumes contain instructions on how to actually do the what they call the spiritual counseling or auditing with the e-meters. And this one here, let me turn it. Okay, I'm going to turn it side. No, I want to turn it so you can read it. I forget how many volumes. This is grade processes and prepared lists. This is volume 4. And I believe there's 12 volumes. And so these are big, thick encyclopedias. This is how to audit. And if we do some Hubbardomancy, that is, we just turn it random to a page. So yeah, a lot of the new people, there's a list of like instructions. Here's a process. Look around and find something that would assist you in controlling another. Look around and find something that would assist others in controlling others. Look around and find something that would assist you in controlling yourself. Look around and find something that would assist another in controlling you. This is 4 flows, obviously. And from where could a victim communicate to you? From where could you communicate to a victim? From where could a victim communicate to others? From where could you communicate to yourself because of a victim? So, yeah, look at that. So you don't see these much around anymore. If you could buy a set and you're a serious researcher, get a set of the red volumes and green volumes. Now, so that's the red volumes. Now I have Karen and I have a set of red, green, blue. We have everything. People have sent us so much stuff. This is the green volumes. Now, the green volumes are the administrative, how to run the church as an organization, as a corporation. Organization, executive course, basic staff hat. And there's a ton of these too. And this is so that red volumes were auditing or counseling, green volumes were organization, how to get people in, how to get money, more hubromancy. He says, quote, he writes in 1959, it has come to my attention that some central orgs are not quick to furnish service and cooperation to mission holders or field auditors, and also that these are sometimes upset with central orgs. It is not true that mission holders are all out to destroy central orgs. That's funny because later on, that's what David Miscavige said, is the mission holders were SPs and they were out to destroy central orgs. Scientology being a franchise system originally, the mission holders owned their own orgs, and they could deliver up to a certain level, then they'd turn it over to the Scientology owned orgs. And anyway, so you had all this vast, this huge let me get back here. You had this huge, so these are the bulletins. So Scientology became codified over time, and Hubbard actually has a policy saying anything written by anyone else had to be copyrighted under his name. Hubbard wrote, when in doubt, copyright it, spare no expense, copyright it. So those are the red volumes, green volumes. They are big, and they're just tens of thousands of pages. The complexity is a breathtaking accomplishment, even though it is evil nonsense. We marvel at the beast. Indeed, good sir, we do. We marvel at the beast. Now, in stable datum, you have a photo of a man on a phone, so I'm assuming you're male, but you may not be. You may not be. So that could be part of your clever ruse. Yeah, it is amazing. And when you see, like, let me get this. Oh, so much stuff. Look at this beast. Look at this thing. It weighs so much. Now, David Miscavige, not wanting newer Scientologists to know these exist, pulled them out of the orgs, and on the new course packs, I understand, he just takes excerpts from these things, because it used to be they were in the course rooms and they would say, what do the materials say? So anyway, and then they also have some other big fat books. Now, around tax exemption time, they created the Volunteer Minister's Handbook, and you can see all the hands reaching, clamoring for the bright rays of sunshine that emanate from L. Ron Hubbard's, that emanate from L. Ron Hubbard, and people clamoring for Scientology. So just these, I just took a sample of books to do the video, and look at that. It's like, yeah, look at that. And that's just like a tiny little fraction, a smidgen. My camera got bumped. Let me move it down. My camera got bumped. Behind me is a picture of a bridge. Isn't that beautiful? There's a picture of a bridge. It's called Bridge of Hope. It's a gorgeous picture. I move art around because Karen and I are art dealers. So sometimes when I sell something, I replace it. So it's nice to have art. My goodness, Warrior Queen exclaims, those are tomes. They are tomes. They are tomes. Copyright in this case has a dual meaning for sure. Copy. And copywriting too. Yeah, the copyist. Yes, it does. Lynn, 1968. These deep dives into Scientology and Hubbard are great, Jeff, since there's so many fantastic newbies to this topic. If they just watch Aaron, they get service info. Well, no, respectfully, I hear what you're saying. Aaron does a great job of explaining Scientology on an operational level. I'm going to do a lot of historical work that I'm surprised, and I'm being this with all due respect. A lot of many second gens I've met don't know their own church history. And that's not surprising because the church has destroyed the church history. You will never know who Mary Sue Hubbard is. If you were a second gen, say born in 1990, you may not have known of Mary Sue Hubbard because she was made a non-person. You may have heard, Hubbard had a wife, but you wouldn't know he had a second wife or even a first wife. You wouldn't know Hubbard was a deadbeat dad. When he left his first wife, he didn't pay child support, and Polly, his first wife, had to sue him for child support. And around the same time, his second wife sued for a divorce, alleging mental cruelty. So I think it's important to do history. John Atack's been doing it, and I have a different. There's certain things John Atack. I really like John Atack. He's a friend, but I want to emphasize other things than he does because I have a different perspective on it. John spent 9 years, and he is an expert, to be sure, on Scientology. I like to think myself an expert, but I have a different emphasis than John. So I'm just trying to give a lot of the newer people a taste of what it really is, of what it really looks like. So, yeah, you have these huge encyclopedias on how to run the organization and do the tech. And so this is what the Scientology religion consists of. Again, I'm going to put this on my blog so you can have the slideshow. And I'm having, oh, look who we have in the house. Clearwater Chad in the house. Hey, everyone. Hey, Chad. Hey, Clearwater Chad. Saw you down there with the LRH birthday with John Poe. I like that cake. Chad was with John Poe on the Go. And Poe on the Go made a cake that said "Happy Birthday, Ron" on one side, and then "Happy 30 to Life, Danny Masterson" on the other. So they were celebrating L. Ron Hubbard, who's called Source. His birthday was March 13. He was born in 1911 in what was it, Tilden, Nebraska. And so SPs, including Aaron, who was dressed up like Danny Masterson in an orange jumpsuit, a curly wig with his beard. So Danny Masterson was there. Hey, Poe, good to see you, Chief. Howdy, howdy, howdy. Howdy to you, Poe on the Go. That was so funny to watch you down in Clearwater. That was hysterically funny. Like you get a gold star for suppression. SP. Oh, I'm glad to get some of the players back from Clearwater. And Poe escaped unscathed because I thought John Poe on the Go, being a former chief of police cop, I thought sure that they were going to set up Clearwater Clearwater PD to arrest Poe on some BS charge so they could get a booking photo. Book him. And Chief Poe's too smart. And well, thank you. But my work draws on Barefaced Messiah and other work, so I'm indebted to them. I appreciate the comment, but I build on their work. I stand on their shoulders, and because we have to pass along the tribal knowledge, a lot of which you'll never find anywhere. So let's continue. Now, this is the formal part of the presentation. And this is what the Scientology religion, as it calls itself, consists of. And I don't see it as a religion. Some people say, please use the word cult. But for the sake of a layout, and because I'm going to be doing something with this information, we're going to call it a religion. But I'm going, so this is what it consists of. L. Ron Hubbard's copyrighted body of written and spoken words. And those are called the scriptures of Scientology. Scientology's copyrighted trademarks, service marks, logos, etc. For example, RTC, the Religious Technology Center, owns the word Scientologist. I believe it's a service mark. And then this copyrighted intellectual property, because that's all Scientology is. It's copyrighted intellectual property that's sold commercially. And they try to say you donate for it. But if you really want to know what Scientology is, the Scientology cult consists at its core of copyrighted intellectual property. That's what I emphasize. Therefore, RTC effectively owns and controls Scientology religion. I have been asked this question many times: who owns Scientology? And this is a great question. Who owns Scientology? Scientology consists of all the copyrighted words of L. Ron Hubbard. And I showed you these massive books, and there's the blue volumes, that's Search and Discovery, I believe, and then the red volumes, the green volumes, and then there's another set of volumes, and then are Hubbard's voluminous lecture sets. That guy could not stop talking or writing. It's like, so look at this. So these lecture sets of Hubbard's lectures, this has all the occult stuff, by the way. If you can pick up these up online cheap, it's 70 hours, the Phoenix lectures. And these were delivered in 1952, and there were only 38 people in the audience. But this is, if you want to get into the Crowley and the Antichrist stuff, this is what you want to buy. And you should be able to pick up a set online pretty cheap, the Phoenix lectures. Somebody was kind enough to donate a whole set of lectures to me. So if you want to donate stuff, I'm always researching it. And then when I get near the end of my trail, I'll donate it to a university, because that's what I'll do. So yeah, so basically it's the copyrights. That's all Scientology is. It's a copyrighted system, and it's monetized, and the author must be paid royalties. All right, folks, this old hillbilly's worn out. Be safe and smash that like. Thank you. And you're not an old hillbilly. Poe does this thing. I'm just old hillbilly. He's not. That guy is he's probably CIA. That's what I think Poe on the Go is. I think he's really CIA, but he likes to play that simple cop. He likes to pretend like he's some, small town cop, like Barney Fife on Andy Mayberry, where they let Poe carry one bullet in his pocket and an unloaded gun. Come on, Poe, you're hardcore. I know you're up to something. I know you're an agent. We just haven't figured out which agency. And but they say that about me too. I'm a boomer, Benita Hopkins says. Well, me too. And the old saying we had was bullshit baffles brains. I think this really applies. It may explain why LRH survived a pseudoscience. Yeah. Yeah, there's something to. Can someone answer my question? Asks Misfit76. Can someone answer my question of who's next in line to take after Davey Boy? That's the most asked question. My opinion is that Monique Yingling, non-Scientologist, will step in, and she'll be the ultimate shot caller, because she is the second most powerful person in all of Scientology. I don't think Lou would take it. Lou would take it over. That's COB's. He hooks up with Lou. Poe said earlier that the Florida heat wore him out. Yeah, that will wear anybody out. Anyone. So let's go back to how the Scientology religion. So basically, whoever owns and controls the copyrights of Scientology, the trademarks, the service marks, they effectively own and control Scientology. Therefore, David Miscavige, because he's the chairman of the board, Religious Technology Center, he effectively owns and controls Scientology. That's who really owns Scientology. Now, he doesn't own it personally, but in his position, he basically owns it and controls it. So I made a footnote here. The Church of Spiritual Technology, they're the folks that build the vaults. They own some of the intellectual property. But CST is controlled by RTC, and so CST ownership is meaningless. RTC, the Religious Technology Center, owns the OT levels. I think CST owns some of the lower level stuff, but it's a meaningless. It's a distinction without a difference. CST is acquiescent to RTC. So David Miscavige effectively owns Scientology. And that's because he owns and controls RTC owns and controls the copyrights. And let's move on. So those are the three main points. We're going to have 7 points. And okay, the Scientology religion consists of next an exclusive master licensing agreement that should be singular, made by RTC and between RTC and the Church of Scientology. It's a little bit of typing I got to correct. Basically, what happened is that RTC is the owner of all the copyrighted technology. They license the Church of Scientology International, CSI. They license them, they give them a sole license to use L. Ron Hubbard's body of work. And then Church of Scientology International, in turn, sub-licenses all the orgs. So Church of Scientology Los Angeles, Flag Land Base, The Ship, Church of Scientology New York, Detroit, Austin, St. Hill, wherever a Church of Scientology is, it's a sub-licensee of CSI. Church of Scientology International has no members. It only has a board of directors and trustees. It has no members. It's a non-membership corporation, and it's an administrative. It's like, say, Taco Bell. Taco Bell licenses individual Taco Bells, or no, actually, I'm going to say McDonald's. McDonald's licenses independent franchisees to use McDonald's technology, and they have to adhere to strict rules and uniformity. That's all that RTC does. RTC licenses the Church of Scientology International to sub-license. That's all it does. So it'd be like if McDonald's had an intellectual holding company on how to make French fries and hamburgers and fix the milkshake machines, they would license another corporation to license franchisees. So that's all you're dealing with is a franchise system. Now, CSI in turn creates bad faith contracts of adhesion, which we're going to get into. And then Scientology, there's also a legally separate corporate membership organization, which we're going to get into, the International Association of Scientologists. That has no legal relationship whatsoever to Scientology. That's what's mind-blowing. This membership organization, which we'll get into, has no legally separate, no legal relationship to CSI or RTC. If this is confusing, don't worry, we're going to get to it. Now, Scientology also consists of a captive slave labor force because it needs captive slave labor to run the enterprise. Now, the Scientology religion also consists of the real estate, and that's central to Scientology for reasons I'll explain. And it also consists of the cash and investment accounts of Scientology owned, and this is some typos I made, Scientology accounts owned and controlled by both Scientology and non-Scientology entities. I was rushing before the show, so if there's some typos, I'll clean it up. So basically, it's cash, real estate, copyrights, and then you have a captive slave labor force, and that's it. If you want to, later on freeze it, I'm going to put it up on my blog. But basically, Scientology is cash, real estate, copyrights, and a slave labor force. So this is it in a nutshell. If you really want a quick picture, whoever controls RTC, and that's David Miscavige, effectively owns and controls all of Scientology. And that's it. There are no checks and balances in Scientology to control Miscavige. Now I'm wrestling with an infographic, and if someone's an expert, please reach out to me. this is kind of how I break it down. This is easier than reading, from lawsuits. So you have RTC, Church of Scientology International, Sea Organ staff, and the IES, and then the real estate. And that's an important part of it. There's like the four components. The real estate you actually need. Everything you're looking at here is legally separate or non-existent. So RTC is a separate legal corporation from the Church of Scientology International. They're legally separate. The IES is legally separate from RTC and CSI. The Sea Org has no legal form of existence. The real estate is what they need to perform their duties in, and the real estate's not owned by any of these entities. Entities owned or controlled by CSI own the real estate. And so you can see this is deliberately designed to be a confusing maze, but it's really not if you know how to look up who owns what piece of real estate. Also, Scientology needs real estate so that an IES member can go into a building owned by a Scientology corporation and get copyrighted tech delivered to them by a Sea Org lawsuit. So this is how it breaks out. Okay, you, the non-Scientologist, you're called a WOG. Now, this is actually from the Scientology Technical Dictionary, which has also been withdrawn. You can just type in Scientology Technical Dictionary PDF, and you can get a copy of the Tech Dictionary, and it'll give you a lot of definitions. Some of them they don't want out in public, and that's why they withdrew the Technical Dictionary. And it's a big fat encyclopedia that defines all the invented words. This is Hubbard's definition. A WOG, he said it stood for worthy Oriental gentleman, but it's not. It's an abusive word. He says this means a common, ordinary, run-of-the-mill garden variety humanoid. So in Scientology's opinion, they consider you to be a humanoid, which means subhuman, just a hypnotized zombie. And then he says a WOG is somebody who isn't even trying. So it's a very pejorative term. It's a very insulting term. Now, Hubbard even gets more charming. So you have a WOG, and that's Scientology's goal, is to get the WOG into Scientology and separate the WOG from his or her money, their money. And Hubbard also charmingly called non-Scientologists raw meat pre-clears or raw meat WOGs. So you're called a pre-clear if you're not up to the state of clear. So non-Scientologists are called WOGs or raw meat WOGs or raw meat pre-clears. And it's defined as one who has never had Scientology processing. The guy thinks he's a brain. He doesn't know he's a thetan. He isn't up there, and he thinks he's deteriorated into a bit of matter. He thinks he's a body and so forth, hence the jocular term raw meat. But Hubbard wrote manuals on we have to get raw meat into the orgs. So raw meat is a form of income. So that's what you're thought of. You're thought of as raw meat WOG. And Scientology literally wants to consume you right down to the bone marrow and not leave anything. So that's the definition. Now, the Sea Org, this quote I want to read, when Scientology made its 1023 application, beginning, I think, 1991, to get tax exemption 501c3, which it had lost in 1967. There's a package, and I'm going to do another podcast on that. This is what they told the IRS, quote, although there is no such organization as a Sea Organization, the term Sea Org has a colloquial usage which implies that there is. There are general recruitment posters and literature for the Sea Org, which implies that people will be employed by the Sea Org when in reality they will join, making the billion-year commitment at some church that is staffed by Sea Org members and become employees of that church corporation. Thank you, Mary. It is a nice graphic. So Probably the most stunning thing I found in my early research is this is an IRS document, and they admit that there's no such organization as the Sea Organization, though it's implied. So this is, again, this is part of the fraud. This is why I'm calling this from a professional fraud investigator, and I do professionally investigate frauds. I've investigated a lot of cults as a private investigator. This is stunning. The Sea Org doesn't exist, and this is what the Scientology in writing told the IRS. And one time I was talking to the IRS, and I had this submission with me, and I said, look, the Sea Org doesn't even exist. And yet David Miscavige is a Sea Org member. So that's fraud on its face. And Scientology argues that the Sea Org is a religious order, and it's the best religious order because it has no corporate form of existence. So the first thing to know is the Sea Org doesn't exist. Scientology admitted that to the IRS, and that's one of their secrets. I have hundreds of pages of documents that Scientology submitted to the IRS. They are available. You just have to know how to look for them, and that's going to be another episode. Oh my God, I could parse that out. It is all a contradiction in terms. Yeah, no kidding, Mary. And yeah, when you start looking at what they told the IRS, what they say, you can spot contradictions and fraud. There's all the indicia of fraud everywhere. And here, when you join the IAS, you can't walk in because the Church of Scientology International has no members. In order to get Scientology at all, you have to join its official membership organization. It used to be called the Hubbard Association of Scientologists International, and that was done away with. In 1986, they started the International Association of Scientologists. So you have to belong to the membership organization, which, as it discloses, it has no legal relationship to the Church of Scientology, which is kind of mind-blowing. It's like saying we have nothing to do with this. We're just the membership group. And there was a question the IRS asked during the tax exemption investigation. Does the IRS pay royalties to use copyrighted materials belonging to the Church of Scientology International, or RTC? And they said, no, we don't have to pay because we're just engaging in fair use, basically. And they also notice, if you look down on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it says, I also understand that membership dues, donations, and contributions are not refundable. So at the outset, any money you give to the IAS, and the IAS gives out bowling trophies, what we call the bowling trophies, none of that money, none of that 400 million Bob Duggins donated is refundable. If you donated 40,000 to become a patron, that's not refundable. So you agree at the outset that you will never get any refunds from the IAS, but you have to belong to it to get services from a corporation called the Church of Scientology International, from one of its orgs that are a licensee. Now, on the right is the bridge to total freedom, and you're hoping to go up to the bridge, but it's a precondition, as I said over and over, you have to sign the 4 contracts: the Religious Services Enrollment Application Agreement and General Release. So, and you have to first join the IES so that you're a member of the membership organization, which is, here's an interesting thing. And this is especially for you legal-minded types. The International Association of Scientologists is what's called an unincorporated membership organization. It's unincorporated. That would be like if a bunch of us, and I've used this example before, and it's a good example. Let's say a bunch of us, we liked Corvettes. And so we met every Saturday, and we would meet at a burger place, have lunch, and then we'd go on a road rally with our Corvettes, say through San Francisco Canyon, out to Edwards Air Force Base and back. We're unincorporated. We don't have a checking account. We're not a formal corporation. We're unincorporated. We just are people who share a common passion. The IES is an unincorporated membership association. It can't do anything in and of itself. Therefore, it needs an operating arm. And that operating arm is called the International Association of Scientologist Administrations, IASA, and that's staffed by Sea Org members. But the Sea Org doesn't legally exist, but it's nevertheless staffed by members of a non-existent. So you have an unincorporated membership association that it can't have a checking account. It can't do anything on its own. So it has to have an operating arm staffed by members of a non-existent. The Sea Org has no existence. So this is when you deep dive into Scientology, you see the bullshit, the fraud. The Sea Org is simply you make a commitment to serve for 1 billion years, then you sign a contract to work for a Scientology org, say in wherever they want you, LA, Florida, wherever they want to put you. Do you think a campaign to tinker with California's religious corporation laws might help expose Scientology? Yes, I do. But I'm not going to get into there now. Late again. Uncle Jeff will have to watch the first bit afterwards. Yeah, I started late. I apologize. That was my fault. High seas banditry. Any Sea Org who makes more than $600 a year gets a W-2 and counts as an employee. I don't know that. They have to be on a payroll somewhere, and the IRS classifies. Now, my question: if you get it, see, I've had high seas banditry. I've had Sea Org members who cannot collect Social Security when they're 65. They're former Sea Org, or like the late Mark Plummer, Warrior, a good friend of Karen and I. He couldn't get money, or he got a bare pittance because he didn't have his records, and the church couldn't provide them. So I would love to interview an expert in religious workers in America. What documents do they get? And I've heard people say they do get a document, and I've had other older people like Mark Plummer told me he didn't have anything on the file when he went to Social Security. They had no records on file for the years he was a staff member. So that's a good question. I need help on that from a professional on what Sea Org member. And also, if you're former Sea Org, reach out to me. I'd like to see if you had pay stubs, or do they pay you in cash? I know in the old days they paid you out of cash and you'd get an envelope. So that I would like to get into. So in order to go up to the bridge, you belong to the IES, and then you sign contracts that strip you of your civil and legal rights. So it's an unbalanced equation. Scientology has all the power, you have none. So you belong to an unincorporated membership association. You sign contracts with a non-membership corporation. And then what you do next is you go into, here, let me get this. I'm operating off. You go into a building owned by a Scientology corporation, Flagland Base, LA, Tampa. You go into a building owned by Scientology. So the way it is, again, to repeat, you belong to an unincorporated membership association whose operating arm is run by Sea Org, which has no legal form of existence whatsoever, no address. You can't get out an envelope and write a letter to Sea Org because it doesn't exist. It's ethereal. It's a phantom. It's bullshit. But you go in, so you sign a contract. You sign 4 contracts with the Church of Scientology. You get SEC checked on. Then you go into this is one reason Scientology has to own real estate, because the church needs a place to have its non-existent Sea Org members go in. And then you're a paying public and you paid your money and you go in. This guy doesn't look happy. This comes up a Scientology magazine. He's probably running something pretty rough. Maybe that time in the T8 galaxy where he killed billions of people with a mercury-based death ray. Who knows? This could be the reincarnation of Olney Matheson. So you go in, he's getting auditing by a Sea Org member. So the arrangement of parts is specific. You are, he's a paying public member. He's a member of the IES. He doesn't belong to a church. So there's no church membership. He belongs to a membership organization. And this Sea Org member who is auditing him, this fellow with glasses, and L. Ron Hubbard said Dianetics would allow you to get rid of your glasses, but we say that all the time. That didn't happen for this fellow or anyone else. So the Sea Org member who belongs to the Sea Org, which doesn't exist, is auditing him using the copyrighted materials that are owned by RTC, and CSI has licensed them to the Flag Service Organization. So the paying public member there, the unhappy scowling fellow, he will pay his, say, 40,000 for this, whatever he's doing. And then Flag will take part of the money. And then part of the money will go to CSI for administrative costs. Some money will go up to the Religious Technology Center. Some will go to CST to pay for the archival products so that the works of L. Ron Hubbard can withstand nuclear holocaust. And, Shelley Miscavige, if she's at Twin Peaks, is commonly thought, and I think she's there, they can pay for the facility where she's at. So that's kind of how it's worked. Is that called Thetan constipation? Yes, he's straining to pass an engram. That's so funny. This technique renders language meaningless, as meanings and definitions prevent abuse of authority. Yeah, yeah. But you can see what they're doing. This degraded being with myopia shouldn't be auditing people. Well, I don't know how he audits people. He look, the whole thing is nuts. The Sea Org doesn't exist. So he signed a contract with Flag, and he's working for $47 a week. The poor schlep, and look at that suit, doesn't fit him right. I mean, look at the Sea Org member. Look at that collar. I mean, the suit, it doesn't even fit him. I mean, I guess they have a pile of clothes, like some tailoring is in order, or a properly sized coat for that fellow. I feel bad for most Sea Org members, not all of them, but some of them who are just like born into it. It's horrible. We don't know this poor Sea Org member's thing. We don't know what he's doing or when he began or what his horror story is, but we know he has an ill-fitting coat. And there looks like op shop free bin suit. You know what happens? Matt Pesh told me that if you have a uniform part, and they don't call them like buttons and shoes and badges, they call them uniform parts. I don't know why that is. Uniform parts. I don't know why they call it that, but if you need a uniform part, you might not get one. You might have to, and there's some thievery that goes on in so I want to just check something. There's some thievery that goes on. Here's an early thing I created in 2014 when I was trying to get this down on paper. And I'm going to share it with you. It's a little, I want to refine it, but I created this in 2014 when I was doing, so I'm going to stop sharing this for a minute. Just stop sharing this I'm going to show you a wall chart I created. And I was having a meeting with a government agency, and I was just trying to get stuff down on paper. So this is an early thing. I call it the Scientology Mafia wall chart. And let's make it big. I'm going to enlarge that a little bit. And this is kind of shows you the three columns I created. Okay, so this is the Scientology Mafia wall chart. And let me get it a little bit bigger for you. And if you can see it, does it need to be larger? Should I make it a little bit larger for your convenience? Because some of you may have to wear glasses because you haven't gone up to the level of clear. Okay, you can see. Okay, so let me just enlarge it one more time. Okay, now when I created this, I wanted to show to the left-hand column that David Miscavige controls the IES, as well as RTC and the Church of Scientology and everything. So I'm going to post the link to this, but the IES is an unincorporated membership association, and CSI services are delivered in, Scientology-owned buildings. So this I'm going to put up. If you really want to study it and you're new to Scientology, you read it as a 3-column. So David Miscavige is a mafia-style pseudo-religious leader. He controls everything: RTC, CSI, CST, Flagwise, Able, and you can see the franchise system. David Miscavige also controls the Sea Org, and so these are my original research notes I started working on in 2014 when I was breaking it down into simple problems. Because if you're going to study Scientology, I wanted to see how you actually became a Scientologist, what you sign, where the money goes. And this is sort of, if you get your mind around, this is a really simple part of how the multi-billion-dollar transnational criminal syndicate works. It's all designed around fraudulent. And I say at the top, there's made men. It's a mafia. There are made men. So this was one attempt at a wall chart. And I'm going to go to, there's another. I decided this wasn't good enough, and I took another wall chart and I tried to create version 2. And this is sometimes what you have to do. This was another attempt at a wall chart of how Scientology works. This might be better because it shows, I put a red line, that religious tax exemption shield. So beginning at the bottom, I started parsing out all the parts of Scientology. And you have to know the relationship of the IES, the membership corporation, to the Sea Org, the licensing body, the Church of Scientology in the middle. And here, the church owns all your PC folders, which can be culled by OSA for blackmail. I started getting more into the knowledge report, sec checks, abusive ethics cycle there in the middle column, the financial abuse of parishioners via a sham justice system. Money must be donated for buildings or unwanted goods purchased. And then you have Stalinist enforcers. And so this is probably a really good chart to study. It would take it's not, once you start from the bottom and read up, and I explain that, this is how I do my research. I just sort of had to break it down and put it on paper. This was again December 13, 2014. So, yeah, you scroll, it's a PDF version, you can get it. And I note up here, escaping from the Church of Scientology, SP declares OSA internet surveillance and harassment of posting communities. We're seeing that going on. Church owned and operated hate websites containing lies or PC folder data. Church paid private investigator firms spying, stalking, and buying phone records, public harassment by surrogate OTs. So I want to go back, and that's sort of the research methodology. And that's why I'm trying to break it down into easy pieces. And this podcast I'm doing now is an attempt to do that. But what it results in, I'm going to stop sharing that. This is a chart I did today because I wanted to make it very easy. And where's my, okay, so we have the Sea Org member auditing you. But where it finally winds up, these are the component parts I think that are most easily, I'm going to work on this because I'm talking to someone. This is how I would refine it in just a quick way to think of it. There's raw meat, and the goal of Scientology is to bring in raw meat, wogs, and they're going to do a mind fuck. They're going to, have you sign those contracts. Then they're going to do TRs. They're going to do what's called upper level indoctrination. They're telling you they're indoctrinating you. Scientology is a wealth extraction machine. It is a wealth extraction machine. They even extract money from Sea Org members. It's sec checks, and that goes to their internal justice system that's scammy. Ethics and justice, that's really, brutality. And then it's a form of slavery. Ultimately, Scientology sells freedom, but it's all about slavery. The mind fuck, that's a quick way of talking about, you can talk about coercion, Stephen Hassan's bite model, brainwashing. I don't like, that's an older construct. I think a quick way of talking about it's just a mind fuck. And I think that's a very good term because it is a mind fuck. It alters your personality. It alters your identity. It takes away your own self-determination. It takes away your power of choice. It tells you what to think. Hubbard said you're never to evaluate for the pre-clear, but that's all Scientology ever does, is it evaluates you as an ethics particle, SP. I mean, it talks about all you. So it's always evaluating and judging you. It's taking away all your money. And money can also, if you look at life energy, it takes away all your life energy, all the years of your life. And it's constantly has you under surveillance and interrogation by the organization, by other people, even your own spouse and children. So it's ultimately slavery. And because the human condition ends in death, death being the universal part of the human condition, here's the thing that strikes me about death. Death cannot be overcome. No amount of Scientology auditing or processing, even if you spend 400 million like Bob Duggan, you're going to die. That's what happens to humans. We all die. We all experience physical death. And it can happen at any time, anywhere. You just never know when you're going to die. And I think what strikes me most, for everything Hubbard talked about, cosmic, whole track, BTs, everybody dies. It all ends the same way. People die. I predicted that David Miscavige will die an ordinary WOG death, that he'll be in an ER somewhere with an asthma attack, sucking on oxygen, and he'll die. I think he dies of a lung disease, breathing related problem, asthma attack. So that's what's insurmountable for Scientology. Like every other religion, it can't conquer death. Doug Doring, 66, ABC Mouse, died. You have a lot of Scientologists die. Kirstie Alley died. Kelly Preston. Everyone dies. Chick Corea. So what Scientology, the best it can do is say that you'll die and you'll reincarnate. But that doesn't change the fundamental problem of its mind fuck, cash drain, sex checks, slavery, what it does to you, what it does to your children, what it does to your family, what it does to your mind, the total destruction. So for everything that Scientology claims to be and do, you die. So my thinking is in the years that you want to have quality of life. You want to have freedom to do the things you want to do. You want to have the freedom and comforts of your family, your marriage, your relationships, your job. And a cult is inherently designed to take away all of that from you so that you devote all your life energy, all your money to the cult, all your children. And in the end, you're left with nothing because when you die, death takes away everything. So during your lifetime, why don't you keep it and not give it to the cult of Scientology? So I'm going to be doing a series of things. And this was a first pass through. My subsequent passes to educate new Scientology watchers, I'll simplify it. This was like a high level overview. Some of it was complicated, but I'm going to simplify it and break it down into easy pieces because it's really the organization and the legal structure of Scientology that kills. And it's also the ethics of L. Ron Hubbard that kill. And it's the security checks, the demand for production, the sleep deprivation. if you look at all the parts of Scientology, when they sum together, they kill. They kill people through stress. They kill people through incredible financial stress, relational stress, and that's why I want to explain it. So my final form, even though I showed a lot of other data, this is what it sums to. This is what you get. You're going to die, and given the fact that you're going to die, why would you spend your life in a cult? There's a in Buddhism, there's a saying that there's a prayer that you there's a hope in a prayer that you awaken before you die, and that's what I hope for everyone and for Scientologists. That you awaken to the scam before you die. So let's take some comments. It's not just slavery; it's a system that systematically takes away all internationally acknowledged human rights. Benita, that's a profound statement. And they talk about human rights while destroying all international human rights. And I have a pamphlet on that, in fact, that Scientology talks about what you have a right to in this pamphlet, and everything that they say in that pamphlet. Yeah, any and all internationally acknowledged standards of human rights, Scientology takes away from you. They can imprison you with their kidnap contract if your CS deems you type 3, your case supervisor. So, yeah, love Maddie. I like the cat. Very simple chart that says it all. It is, but you have to realize it is a sophisticated arrangement, but it's easy to break down. So, any more questions before we go? So that's it. Kind of like the 100,000-foot overview of the corporate organizations. And I'm going to, like I said, in future podcasts, I'm going to break it down into really simple pieces so that you know what Church of Scientology International really is and how it works. See about an account called the Sea Org Reserves. You know about a money account called the Church of Scientology Religious Trust. You know about the IES U.S. Members Trust. I'm going to show you where all the pools of money are. I'm going to show you where their real estate is and who owns that real estate, who actually owns the orgs. They're not all owned by, So I want to show you that. Do they still have non-Scientology trustees? Under when they were doing the reorganization, the Church of Spiritual Technology, at the very top, CST has the right to revoke RTC's licensing rights. And at the very top of CST, of the Scientology pyramid, according to the legal language, there has to be 3 tax lawyers to ensure that the Church of Scientology never does anything to jeopardize its tax exemption. And these tax lawyers do not have to be Scientologists. And I believe they're called special directors. And we can cover that because that whole era of how the top level architecture is something I'd like to cover on Stable Datum. The top level architecture, I believe Monique Yingling occupies one of those chairs. And it was vacated by Lawrence Heller. Lawrence Heller was a non-Scientology attorney, and I believe he had one of those seats and he resigned from it. So one of the most secretive things in Scientology, it doesn't have anything to do with the Xenu. I'll tell you two of the most secret things in all of Scientology, from my opinion. The whereabouts of David Miscavige on any given day. That's the big secret in Scientology. His whereabouts on any given day are top secret, unless he's at a publicly announced event. You'd never know where he's at. The other secret in Scientology is the top level special directors of the Church of Spiritual Technology. Because the Church of Spiritual Technology has the duty and obligation to revoke RTC's rights. And they're supposed to be able to do it quickly and easily. And if you look at Miscavige's behavior, the Church of Spiritual Technology special director should revoke RTC's rights. So that gets into another show. but we're now at an hour and 44. So it's been through a lot. I apologize for being late at the beginning. It's not like me at all. It's just some computers, and I was gone yesterday up to San Jose, so a little bit busy. So thank you for all the comments. It was a great thing. Great comments. Yeah, like the Red Queen says, it means whatever I want it to. That's Lewis Carroll's slap at authoritarian mind control. It's exactly it. It means whatever Hubbard meant it to be. And wow, Jeffrey, that is a copious amount of mind mapping. Thank you, Mary. It's taken years. I appreciate that. It's taken years and I'm still working at it. And like I said, I have a different, I really like John Atag, a lot of admiration. He's an expert, knows amazing things. I just have a different emphasis that I want to present, break it down into bite-sized pieces for YouTubers. And I want to create a series of content for content creators where it's bite-sized chunks, easy to understand. And stay safe out there while you're out protesting at the orgs. We need to attend the Lenski estate sale. Well, that's their brothers, the Lenski brothers, Sherman and Stephen. Yeah, they are two. The Lenski brothers created, or Lensk, I think it's Lensk. They created a lot of the architecture. Sherman and Stephen, along with it's Lensk, and Abramson, I believe. They're over in Woodland Hills. Yeah, the Lensk brothers, they're the shadow men. They're two of the top shadow men. And I call it shadow men is the name of the lawyers and other people who are non-Scientologists who have a vested interest they have a vested financial interest in seeing the cruelty perpetuated. Monique Yingling has a vested interest financially in seeing the system of cruelty and mindfuck and slavery, destruction of persons. Monique Yingling has defended this shit. She's a disgrace. She's made a fortune doing it since 86. So the shadow men, that cadre of completely amoral, evil people who profit from the suffering of Scientologists, they're the really evil people, the shadow people who hide out like Monique Yingling, who make a fortune. They don't care if your childhood is destroyed. They don't care if you die. They don't care. They don't care if all your rights are violated. They'll throw the arbitration contract. So there's a whole level too. We can do a show on the shadow men, the people who benefit from the evil, greed, and destruction, death and destruction of Scientology. And they want the status quo to persist. And that's why they defend it. That's why you have people like Matthew Hinks, the attorney for RTC, fighting in court. He doesn't give a shit whether you live or die if you're in Scientology, because he makes a lot of money. I think he bills at about $1,500 an hour, maybe a little bit higher. So he doesn't care. So when you look at Scientology, the system, don't forget to look at the non-Scientology enablers, the attorneys, the PIs, the CPAs, everyone who benefits off it. Yeah, these are the shadow people. The shadow people. And oh, thank you, Benita. Agent. No, I'm just a guy on the internet. But what I did, like I said before, after Alexander Jensch died, my wife's only son died, and he wouldn't let him kiss him goodbye. That was really depraved. So sometimes I don't want there to be any more Alexanders, people who die like that at age 27. I don't want there to, so we do what we can. A lot of it comes out of pain, and you like the goddess Shiva, you transmute your pain. You transmute your pain. Some people can transmute it into art. I want to transmute that into education and helping others. But I mainly want to help right now. I want to help second gen know parts about the history they may not. Second, third gen may not know part of their history because the church wouldn't let them know. But I also want to help YouTubers create content, be a resource, because I think I'm watching YouTube proliferate, the new channels taking on Scientology. I think it's fantastic because it's like Anonymous on steroids. It's amazing to watch YouTubers exponentiate and the freedom of speech going on. So with that, I'll leave you, and we're going to call it an evening. Thank you so much for hanging around for a long show with a lot of information. And we'll see you next time. We're going to take this beautiful exit, and Agent Augustine signing.